Good morning, everybody. I'm going to present some results about the researches we are carrying out in the archaeological area of Velia, which is placed along the western coast of southern Italy. Our researches are addressed in the reconstruction of the main landscape morphology steps and how they influence the urban planning of the town. The town of Velia was founded in the 6th century before current epoch by Greeks along the coastal area of southern Italy. It was not the only Greek town at that time. In fact, to the north of Velia, we have the towns of Cuma, Partenopea, Naples, Vicenza, and Posidonia. Velia was also famous because of the philosophical school of Parmenides. Looking at its position, a question arises. Why did the Greeks choose these coastal areas to establish their settlements? Looking at the present morphology of the area, Velia is settled on a small hill and at the base of it, which separates the Valente river plain to the north from the Fiumarella river plain to the south. This topographic setting is pretty different from those one the Greek found when they came in this area, which was characterized by a rocky promontory bounded by two gulfs to the north and to the south. This landscape was pretty similar to their homeland and provided a strategic position for the control of all maritime routes. These two characteristics probably had driven the choice of this site for the establishment of a new settlement. Previous data suggests that relevant coastal progression occurred since the foundation of Velia, which was also coupled with the onset of flooding. So the question is, how ancient communities have interacted with the rapid and impressive change that affected the coastal environment? To what extent they adapted to contrast their onset to the natural processes? We should start looking at what was going on in the rest of the Mediterranean around the second millennia before current epoch. Data from eastern and western Mediterranean suggests the increase in fluvial events since the second millennia before current epoch. Consider the varied climate context that characterized the different sectors of the Mediterranean during this time interval. This increase in sediment supply was interpreted as the local evidence of significant human impact on the landscape. Our research aims to contribute to disentangling this issue by presenting a particularly interesting case from the coast of southern Campania. Here, the citizens of Velia had to cope with a very dynamic and vulnerable environment where coastline progression was combined with intensive flooding episodes from the surrounding slopes. These processes strongly influenced the development of the urban center from the 5th century before current epoch to the 4th century current epoch, favoring its decline and final abandonment due to the burial of the lower quarters. How we approached this study? We combined the pre-existing stratigraphic data with new boreholes and new archaeological excavation within the framework of a detailed-scale geomorphological analysis of coastal and slope sectors. Here is the geological setting of Velia. Velia is placed on this hilly promontory carved in the Eocene-Miocene tectonic unit made by Marley and Renaceous units. The hill is mantled by the central conglomerate, a lower Pleistocene fluvial deposits, and the base of the hill is covered by colluvial slope and alluvial fan deposits. The rest of the area is mainly characterized by the presence of Holocene fluvial deposits of the Alento and Fiumarella river plain. This is a sketch showing the city during its maximum expansion. The excavated portion of the archaeological area mainly refers to the southern quarter of this area and the small portion of the western quarter. Geomorphological data suggests the presence of several dune ridges, which suggests several paleo coastline position. The hill where Velia was found is also characterized by the presence of many landslide bodies and alluvial fan deposits, and at the base of the hill we have a scarp that has been interpreted as a paleo-sea cliff. Borehole data in the archaeological area suggests the diffuse presence of alluvial deposits, which are identified by these orange colors. That are mainly accumulated in this area, so very close to the slope. Borehole data also allowed to reconstruct the depth of the bedrock, thus enhancing some peculiar landforms such as buried marine terraces. And we have here estimated the thickness of the alluvial deposits, and the apparent reduced thickness in this area is mainly due to archaeological excavation. Stratigraphical data from the southern quarter, we are in this area in a second, suggests the presence of many floods that have been chronologically constrained between the 5th century before current epoch and the 3rd century before current epoch. In this other trench, in Via Porta Quinta, we have a flood events that span from the 1st century Anno Domini to the 3rd century Anno Domini. Here at Porta Marina and Necropolis area, again we have flood events spanning the age from the 1st century Anno Domini to the 3rd century Anno Domini. Close to the slope in the so-called Casa degli Affreschi, we also have landslide deposits dated between the 2nd and 5th Anno Domini, which cover the so-called Casa degli Affreschi. Integration between subsoil and surface data strongly supported by stratigraphical evidence allowed us to reconstruct a geoarchaeological cross-section present between the present coastline and the slope at the rear of the archaeological area. In the geological cross-section, we have several paleo-coastline, and we have evidence of flood events that partially buried and covered the town of Velia. We also may notice the presence of a paleocliff at the rear of the archaeological area. We have also been able to reconstruct some morpho-evolutionary steps that runs from the Holocene extent to the present. So during the Holocene extent, the coastal region of Velia was characterized by a cliffed promontory bounded by two gulfs to the north and to the southeast. At the time of the foundation, beach strips had formed and broadened at the base of the sea cliff, thanks to the first phases of coastal progression following the maximum marine ingression. The abrasion platform at the base of the cliffs were covered by beach and dune sediments, and in front of the seacoast, the grotto sandy ridges, probably isolated, protected in marine lagoon environments, created suitable conditions for landing. During the Greek-Roman time, the town flourished and further expanded the plateau of the hills thanks to successive phases of coastal progression that pushed the shoreline about 200 meters ahead. During the late antiquity and early Middle Ages, several phases of intensive overflooding completely buried the southern quarter. This exceptional increase in sedimentary inputs pushed the coastline about 300 meters ahead, distancing the town from the seacoast. From that moment, the Acropolis hill will no longer be a promontory, and the southern and northern quarters, moving away from the sea, lost their strategic position and were gradually abandoned. In the present day, the modern plain is characterized by a very flat morphology, with mean altitudes of 3 meters above sea level, rarely interrupted by gentle ridges elevating 1 meter over the surrounding territory. At the rear of such ridges, representing remnants of ancient beach dune system, some slightly depressed area can be still noticed, evidence of the ancient Back Ridge Depression. After the Middle Ages, some life was still present in the area before the end of the 17th century, starting from which no more attendance was recorded. To conclude, the Velia site is a very good example of how human pressure enhanced erosion and coastal progression in a sector of the central Mediterranean basin. From the maximum Holocene transgression measured at the base of the slopes of the southern quarter to the foundation, the shoreline progressed over 150 meters, testifying to a progression rate of 0.04 meters per year during this long period. The acceleration in progression trend as the first alluvial fan and slope deposition phases started soon after the foundation. Indeed, in the Roman age, the shoreline had advanced about 100 meters in the southern quarter, testifying to progression rates 5 times higher, estimable in 0.17 meters per year. The main contribution to the acceleration in coastal progression was given by alluvial fan and slope deposits from the catchments within the city walls, but also from mainland in the Allen and Marella rivers valleys. Local deforestation and intensive land use on the slopes were probably the main responsible for the acceleration of morphodynamical processes such as landslides, alluvial fan, and colluvial deposition. Alluvial fan activity attenuated and even interrupted after the abandonment of the town when natural vegetation developed on the slopes, preventing soil erosion. And for those that are interested, this is part of these results have been already published in this paper, and the future research are mainly addressed at the search of the harbor. So the next question we want to answer is, where is the harbor of Velia? And I leave you with this question. Thanks for your attention.